And we are live. Hi, everyone. We are so glad that you are all able to join us today for our event all about tech leadership strategies for 2022. For those of you who might be new with us, just want to share a little bit about Tech in Motion and who I am. So my name is Emma Jordan, and I'm a marketing manager at staffing and recruiting firm Motion Recruitment, who is the founder and creator of Tech in Motion events. Tech in Motion Events is our international tech event series that was created with the goal to bring together the tech community from all over to share ideas and to inspire one another. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get into today's topic and agenda. We are so excited today to bring to you a panel of truly amazing tech leaders and managers who are paving the way for innovation by creating thriving and successful tech teams. Today, you have the unique opportunity to hear from them directly on the most important leadership topics and get to pick their brain. That being said, feel free to drop questions in the Q&A box as we go throughout the discussion, and they will do their best to get to those questions throughout the conversation, and we will save some time for Q&A at the end. Just so you know as well, today's webinar is being recorded and it will be available on demand. So if you have to hop out for any reason, we will make sure to get you that conversation recording. You'll get an email so that you can go ahead and view the video. And last but not least, don't forget to follow us on social so that you can be in the know of all of the upcoming events and opportunities we have. We have a full calendar of tech events coming your way this year, you guys. We have tons of great things coming down the pipeline. We have an event all about diversity, equity, and inclusion coming next month on the 17th. So you definitely want to make sure you're following us on social and on Meetup and subscribe to everything so that you can RSVP and get in on those wonderful events we have coming. Okay, so let's get into the good stuff. I'm so happy to introduce you to our moderator today, Stephen Norton. I'm going to let you take it away from here.
Thanks so much, Emma, and thanks for having us today, and thanks everyone for showing up today. Looking forward to the discussion. Just by way of quick intro, my name is Stephen Norton. I'm the co-head of research, media, and executive networks for Meta Strategy. We're both a boutique technology and strategy consulting firm. We focus on Fortune 500 chief information officers and chief technology officers. So I've had the lucky chance to be able to have a lot of conversations very similar to the ones that we're going to have today. Just to quickly set the scene, when we think about building teams for 2022, I think we're not alone in saying that the last 2.5 years have completely made us rethink how we live and work, and really too how we lead, and especially how we lead our tech teams. Companies across the board are rethinking what it means to work in a hybrid setting or a remote setting. And what we're seeing is everyone's taking a slightly different approach, but those key themes of flexibility, empathy, and other things like that are really here to stay. At the same time, we're seeing a huge evolution in the talent market. As many of you have probably become aware, there's the great resignation, the great reshuffle, lots of competition for top tech talent. And it's not just about attracting that talent, but also retaining your best people and developing them. And to that end, for a lot of the leaders who are on this call today, it means not only do you have to lead your teams, but you have to be a teacher, you have to be a culture builder, and really be intentional about how you're developing those teams. So that leads us into our topic for today, for leading successful tech teams in 2022. I'm so excited to introduce our fellow panelists here. I'll start off with Krishna Nadaminti. She's the Director of DevOps and SRE at Emburse, which is a spend management solutions firm. She has over 12 years of experience building high-performing engineering teams focused on operational excellence. She has a master's in computer science and is a DevOps and cloud enthusiast who believes that culture and community, in creating culture and community while striving to incorporate those values into her work wherever she can. Welcome, Krishna. Our second panelist is Aaron Rosekind. He is the manager of firmware applications at Zoox, which is an Amazon subsidiary that's developing autonomous vehicles and mobility as a service solutions. He leads a team of nearly 40. He's seen that firm grow from a much smaller number to the 40 that they have now, and lots of lessons to share from his journey there. And last but not least, Navendu Garg. He's the director of data engineering at Slalom Build, where he focuses on clients and strategic initiatives focused on data engineering around the major cloud platforms. He's been at the company for more than 6 years and seen the team grow quite a bit as well, and looking forward to hearing the lessons and best practices from all of you today. Welcome. So I thought that we might start off at the top of the funnel, as it were, with a lot of the recruiting and hiring. Obviously, the talent market has been hot the last couple of years. seeing a lot of changes in the way that we are finding talent, bringing them in, and creating an onboarding experience. So Aaron, I thought we might start with you. Curious how you've seen this great resignation, as it's called, change the dynamics of the way that you search for talent and bring the most qualified people in the door.
Yeah, great question. It's definitely a hot topic on an almost daily basis. And the search has really gone really heavily into the online tools like LinkedIn and others, right? We are not able to go to the networking events that we used to and just meet people in person and like hand out my card to people. The strategies and tools have been entirely changed, being entirely online. And we still have sourcing folks who we post jobs online, people apply to those. We have sourcing folks who go out and more proactively look with the online tools. And it's, even when we're doing that, it's still hard to get heard among all the noise because everybody's now, sending the emails and requests. And so like, how do you make that candidate experience memorable and engaging so that not only do they respond, but they stick with you through the whole process? And yeah, just as you said, the whole funnel is really hard. And we at Zoox have done a number of things where we try to make we call it the on-site experience more fun, right? So even though we can't give you the physical tour anymore, we have a number of videos and other sort of like peek behind the curtain opportunities to try and keep that engaging and fun.
Excellent, thank you. It's interesting to hear how it's shifted more to those platforms and really being active on LinkedIn and other places and really intentional about finding those folks. And also interestingly too, just the amount to which organizations today have to really think about how you're telling your story. We're all advertising ourselves to potential candidates, but starting to rethink that and think about those experiences that you can provide. Krishna, turning to you, I'm curious if you have any thoughts on sort of what you look for in a quality candidate as you have new recruits coming in and you're going through the interview process. What are the things that you look for, and then how do you start to evaluate candidates for that right fit?
Great question, Stephen. So we all ideally start with understanding the experience and accomplishments they have on the resumes. That's how they even get passed to how that matches what we are looking for. And that is one most important thing. And for me, I personally value the work ethic and attitude equal to the technical skills they have. So when we anyways judge the technical skills, but it is so important to understand how their work ethic and attitude is. So for that, we give some problem solving and behavioral type of questions. And two other important characters I look for is the learning, if they are willing to learn. And other one is culture. How fit are they to our culture? I'm big on culture, and I've worked very hard to build that with my teams. So it is very important for me when somebody comes in that they fit the culture. And coming to lessons learned, there are so many lessons here. One big one is try to understand the difference between the talker and the doer. Because there are people who talk but who actually are that efficient. They can be even talking better than people who are good at their work. So we need to be able to understand the difference between them by actually giving the right questions to them. And one other important lesson I have learned is interview is always a two-way street. And I'm personally open and transparent. So during interviews, I usually tell them very clearly, like, this is exactly how we are. This is how we function. This is how our culture is. I want to make sure you also want to be here. So it's not only about it, right? So be very transparent and tell them. Otherwise, there is no long-term relation there. So that's one. And one last one is recruiting experience, basically the candidate experience. Some look at the recruiting experience as the reflection of the company. So so it's very important to have like better candidate experience by having solid interviews. And it is very important for the hiring manager to talk to all the people who are helping them to understand what is the purpose or what are they expecting. So they ask questions in the right way. So those are some of the lessons.
Thank you so much, Krishna. I love your point about making it a really transparent conversation, right? It's no longer that power imbalance isn't working in the same way that it may be used to in a lot of these scenarios. Navendu, turning to you, I actually want to build on something that Krishna noted about the candidate experience. And I'm wondering how you're thinking about creating that sort of workflow from the minute you get in touch with someone all the way through the ultimate hiring and onboarding process. How are you thinking about structuring those kinds of processes to make it both attractive to candidates, but also making sure that they're getting onboarded in the proper way?
Yeah, that's a great question, Stephen. I think it all starts with who are involved in the process, the recruiting team, the interview panelists, and then the hiring manager. They all work as one team when it comes to hiring a candidate. The recruiting team definitely is the quarterback of shepherding the whole process. We are very selective of who gets on the interview panel. They are trained, they're shadowed before they get on that panel. The hiring manager, of course, decides on what type of roles he or she is looking for. And based on that, we want to ensure the right candidate comes through the funnel. And then as far as the interview process goes, we have a pretty standard process at each level, whether it's an engineer, architect, or leader. And we make absolute every effort to ensure that the candidate has a great experience throughout the entire process. We try to wrap up things pretty quickly. Don't leave them hanging, especially in this current time where talent is scarce. We definitely have kind of tweaked the process, both externally and internally. Externally meaning the moment a candidate enters a pipeline and is going through the interview process, we make sure the responses are quick. We want to make sure the interview panelists provide their feedback on time. And we have minimal disruption or delay or lag between the interviews. And all these little things help in terms of hiring people.
Fantastic. Yeah, I love how you guys have looked at it from that kind of end-to-end process and see some areas like, how can we make this a little bit more efficient? How can we make this a little bit more convenient for the new folks who are coming in? Thank you all for the perspective on that. That's great. I'm seeing a couple of questions come in about sort of the hybrid and remote experience. So I thought we might go there next. And Aaron, I might come back to you first. Would love to just hear lessons that you've learned over the course of the last 2 years or so. Have there been any particular aha moments or lessons about working in hybrid or working in a remote setting that you think will carry forward into the future of work, whatever that may look like for your firm?
Yeah, for sure. Great question. And super hot topic right now too. I think one of the both fun but challenging things about Zoox is that in a lot of ways we're a hardware company, and a lot of people have to be on site with their hands on the robot, working on it and debugging it. So Zoox is planning to go back to pretty much all full on site, but not exclusively. We had a few people working remote before the pandemic started, and it will continue to be, the occasional exception anyway, even afterwards. And what we've seen while we're in the middle of it here is that there are a number of things that we can do to really enable a few of those core folks who have to be on site to touch the hardware, and how we use Slack and other tools and Zoom to keep them operating. So for example, one of the things specifically that we did is we had a small team focused on building a very challenging part of the robot, and we just had we made the workroom a Zoom room, and we just had Zoom running the whole time, and so people could sort of come in and out of the room as they ran into issues, and so we could sort of scale up the number of people in the room more quickly, and so we could access that in expertise. We could access those debugging ideas, and so we weren't entirely stymied, but at the end of the day, it's like we also we need hands to hold the harness and the probes and everything else. So we've been trying to use a lot of those remote tools. Like I said, Slack and Zoom have been major tools for Zoox, but trying to set up opportunities where we can access the expertise from across the company, even though when we're forced to all be remote, we still have to give people that insight. So in one case in particular, actually, we got a mobile camera, and we're giving people sort of virtual tours of this cranny and that access, and it was the sort of thing where a couple of us were just like, oh, facepalm, this would be so much easier if I could just show you the thing. And so for that aspect, we're super excited to be getting back on site, sooner or later. But for other parts, honestly, remotes worked out really well. And we're still going to be, even though the intent is to get all back on site, we're still going to have opportunities for people to work remotely. We'll have flexible options for there too.
Awesome. That's great. In some ways, necessity is the mother of invention, right? Some of these tools maybe weren't on the roadmap before, but now you have some new and unique ways perhaps to connect with people if we do find ourselves not able to all be in the same place for any reason. Krishna, can I turn to you next? Are there any interesting sort of lessons or aha moments that you've had from the remote and hybrid experience?
Yeah. So I'm big on culture. So it is very hard to build trust, especially in a remote culture. And we are not a hardware company, so our challenges are different. And to build that, I think it is all depending on the leaders, how they build that culture among the teams to improve that sense of teamwork and impact, right? So during the whiteboarding sessions you saw 2 years ago are very valuable piece of the work dynamics that won't go away. But at the same time, it is the situation is like this, that we can't force people to come back home, come back to work, right? So what have helped us is I used to organize some games during the work time. So during what happens is now everybody is remote. We are not doing anything else except talking about work. So there is no specific time where you can do other things. So we have to allocate that time to see how we can engage with others openly. So that worked. And still the human contact is important. So the thing that was very impactful for us was to organize at least once or twice a year or any once a quarter, like if you can get together for something, right? Or create a topic, or we have one big brainstorming session to do. They're very effective when we just went in and did it together. So it doesn't have to be often, but if you are together, it's just easy to do. One thing I do want to be mindful here is about the proximity bias that has come in this world, which we never had to talk about before. It's like because it is remote world, we have recruited people all around the world. And now just because you are, some people are in a specific location, we cannot force them to come back. So we have to be very careful about that.
For sure. Yeah, it's a very different world, but I think you're spot on in that it's that culture piece and thinking about no matter where somebody is, right? How do we make sure that single thread is making it through to all these different individuals? Navendu, turning over to you, any particular insights or lessons from the past couple of years that have really stuck with you or that you're taking into your day-to-day leadership?
Yeah, I mean, so Build has a unique culture because Slalom is a consulting organization and Build is the engineering arm of the company. So at the very core, we are a consulting firm. But our biggest selling point has been that engineers don't have to travel. They work out of our build centers. They're beautiful spaces where people come together, hang out, do cool stuff, and work on projects remotely. So we adopted the remote model even before COVID, and we organized projects around that. So when COVID happened, the transition was seamless for us because we were already playing in that area. I think what helped us was now clients were remote, so they were more sympathetic. The problem that arose was now you cannot go to the build center, so you cannot have that experience that we wanted our engineers and everybody to have. That transitioned over to a virtual world, and then the way we adapted was how to be more connected in the virtual world. We definitely have, regular check-ins, regular one-on-ones, regular team activities. We definitely encourage people to meet up if they feel safe. Last night, my team met for dinner at a restaurant. People who felt comfortable, they joined the team. So that's part of our DNA. I mean, that's how we operate. So it's just that we had put an extra effort for people to feel part of the community.
definitely that increased intentionality
Can I
around
jump on
really
that
building
too,
that
actually?
community.
And,
Yeah, of course,
and
go for
share
it.
a couple things. Yeah, so and in particular, I think what Krishna mentioned about intentionally building community and using games to do it, I'm 100% behind that. It's when you're all remote, you don't get those sort of natural interactions that you would get just from working side by side with people, and you have to be very intentional about creating opportunities and spaces for people to have those interactions. You can't just over Zoom tell everybody in the meeting like, okay, I'd like you to all start trusting each other now. Like, okay, now please be friends. Be collaborative coworkers. Like, you can't just tell people and then have them do that. That's not how humans work, right? You have to build those relationships, and finding games in particular online for ways to do that. I think we've tried, there are a few different games, some lend themselves better. So, we once played a Rocket League tournament. We found out quickly who like the gamers were, and they had an edge. But then we later tried games like Code Names or Wavelength, and those lended themselves much better to be sort of learning more about each other and sharing each other's thought processes. So yeah, I'm all for games, and I think sort of as we've gone through it, we've found that there are some games that lend themselves better to learning more about your coworkers and learning to trust and collaborate.
Awesome. Thanks, Aaron. Yeah, I love that perspective, and thinking about, not just how do we get people in the room for a game, but how can we start to tailor that toward the particular goals of the organization and really building that culture and building that teamwork. I want to turn to a question I see here from Brittany in the chat, and I'll put this to whoever feels they can weigh in. Brittany says that she's thinking about proposing flexible hours with core hours established, as well as a 4-day work week. Does anyone have experience with this that they can share, pros and cons, and any tips for proposing this to executives? Not sure, Aaron, Krishna, or Navendu, if you have some experience with this, but any insight that you can share with Brittany?
I can talk about flexible hours. I think 4-day work week is still a unique idea that'll take some time for adoption, but because Build operates in an agile manner, we definitely have flexible hours as long as we agree to attend the core meetings that are needed for the project. You are entitled to work the way you want as long as you meet your commitment. So that's definitely there. But again, it's a consulting organization. You have to meet the client. You have to meet with the clients where they are, and as long as you can meet those commitments, you feel free to how you operate. The only thing I would say is that as far as the location from where you choose to work from, there's certain tax restrictions that we have to consider. And for that reason, you have to disclose if you have relocated permanently to a certain location, and we need to ensure that that individual is aligned to the appropriate org structure within the company.
Fantastic. Thank you. Let's see. So transitioning a little bit, we've just talked quite a bit about team building, and I definitely want to continue on that theme. But before we do, I want to talk about the sort of inverse of that, I suppose, which is the one-on-ones. Obviously, we don't have the opportunities that we did to necessarily be in person, to grab lunch, or to have those kinds of in-person interactions. And a lot of it is happening over Zoom or similar platforms. Krishna, maybe we'll start with you, but I'm curious if you have any tips for the group here on how best to conduct effective one-on-ones. And we can extend that to team stand-ups as well, but in this environment, kind of making the most of those opportunities to give feedback.
Sure. So what I have learned with one-on-ones is I used to meet once in 2 weeks before, and now we don't have much contact. My direct reports are very senior, so I don't talk with them on a daily basis. So it was more important for me to do one-on-ones on a weekly basis. And that helped me connect with them more. So I know I'm always engaged with them on where things are. And one thing I always advise them is if there is anything to come to me immediately and immediate feedback, right? Don't have to wait for a long time or so whenever, if it is them telling me or me telling them, we try to give immediate feedback to each other. Again, the open and transparency helps here a lot. And for team stand-ups, what I have seen is it was not very efficient, like doing it every single day. We were doing like thrice a week. That worked for us more. Every team and company has their own ways that works for them. There is no set rule for this, no right or wrong for this, but for us, that's what it worked. Yeah.
There's something I actually learned in the process of adapting my one-on-ones to remote that I like a lot, and we'll have to figure out how to bring back once we get to the hybrid, which is, so when we were doing one-on-ones in person, you go for a walk, you get a chance to like sort of just chat and get to know the person. But honestly, I was not as good at like hitting every topic that had like crossed my mind over the last week or two. And now that we're remote, I have a doc that I just sort of keep notes in over the course of the week. And then when we get to our one-on-one, we have a built-in agenda, and we can really cover like every little thing that's come up. And just as you were saying, like you can really stay much better in sync and on top of everything when you're meeting at a higher cadence and you have that more structured one-on-one for hitting the content. And so I love that, and I feel like our ability to communicate about very specific tactical things has actually gotten a lot better, but at the cost of not being able to do that other stuff as well, which is that, you know, the relationship building and career planning and more general stuff. So I feel like now I've had to set aside time for the reverse, which is make sure that we still do that other stuff.
I think one-on-ones are crucial, especially for young engineers, because they don't have the same experience as being in an office, sitting next to other folks and doing brainstorming on different ideas. I think taking a more empathetic approach, you know, one-on-ones is crucial. Doing them more frequently is important. And then doing it across your org structure. Just because I am director of data engineering doesn't mean I cannot have a one-on-one or a skip level conversation with an engineer or architect. In fact, we encourage that because that allows for a more well-rounded conversation with different folks, and it also allows me to give direct feedback to my direct reports. Of course, we encourage real-time feedback, just as Krishna mentioned. In fact, we do that. We practice that across the organization. If you like something, make sure you provide a workday feedback immediately. If something, you know, there's an area for improvement, make sure you reach out to an individual or his or her people manager and have the conversation. Do not wait for a month or 6 months to provide that feedback, because you lose an opportunity to do any kind of course correction. And then as far as meeting the team is concerned, we definitely have a core leadership meeting every week, which I found to be very useful. And just to check in with how are you doing as a leader on the team? What help do you need? What are the areas that we can look into to provide you support? It's not more about eval or a stand-up, it's more about, as a leader, how are you feeling? And how can I help?
Yeah, I love that idea of being able to bring your whole self to that conversation. And as we've said a couple times throughout the talk today, kind of bringing that empathetic viewpoint first to the conversation and that really human conversation to the front. Related to that, and I suppose this is a bit more tactical and related to the day-to-day work, but I also wonder how all of you start to incorporate accountability and prioritization into these conversations. One thing that I've noticed, at least, as a lot of folks on my team have gone remote, is more and more questions about, okay, we've got these 10 things. How do we start to prioritize them? And it's always been a question, but it seems like managing it has become a slightly different game when we've been in different places. So curious, maybe Aaron, I'll go to you. Do you have any thoughts or best practices on how you've managed the prioritization discussions and how you continue to drive accountability around those priorities?
Sure. I think prioritization debates are kind of one of the major things that I've been involved at Zoox, is that it's we're very ambitious. We're doing a lot of hard things, but we don't have enough people or resources to actually do them all right away. And so there are a lot of hard decisions about, like, what do we do today and what do we do tomorrow? And by tomorrow, sometimes that's just next month. But yeah, those are really hard things that we're coming up against all the time. And there are a few specific strategies. The first is that, so Zoox is in a position right now with our backing from Amazon that the primary KPI for the company is schedule. We want to move fast. This is exciting. This is the first time I've been in a company like that. It's not that we're not worried about costs, but schedule is like the number one thing. And so it's nice that we have the whole company behind a single product and with like a single vision on how we want to get there quickly, or a single goal to get there quickly. And we all have different visions about how to do it fastest. And so the strategies for how to get there fastest are often, we bring in a number of subject matter experts. We ask, what do you all think? And what we find is often that the priority, it becomes a lot easier when we start looking at our operations, or in our case, like the firmware team, it's our customers, the other parts of the company that are going to be using our deliverables. And we don't like the conversation like, well, what happens if we just don't deliver that thing this month and we have to give it to you next month? And like, it's hard to step up and say like, okay, well, that might not happen. What are we going to do about it? And then you find out like, oh, the ops team is like totally on top of it and they don't actually need that feature and they're going to be fine. And so even though it's a feature that we may have been really excited about and like looking forward to doing, when you talk to those customers and like your downstream users, finding their flexibility and options and bringing them into the decision-making process helps a lot. That was very like strategic in terms of like the tactical day-to-day stuff. When you have a specific engineer and they're like, I have 10 things, what should I be doing? That's a tougher one. And I think that's going to depend a lot more on sort of where they are and what they're going to be efficient at. And so it's hard to give specific advice on that other than get to know the individual and strategize with them.
For sure. I think we're seeing some common threads coming through a lot of these discussions. Christian, I believe we spoke about this the other day, but you'd mentioned how you really tried to make sure everyone on your team was accountable for something very concrete. Could you talk a little bit about that and the way that goes into your sort of talent development piece and the prioritization question?
Sure. Yeah, this happened when I was given my first project ever, and I was self-doubting myself, like, do you think I can do this? Do I think I can do this, right? So I wanted to make sure when I'm leading the team, it should not happen to my people. Again, I see my leadership as responsibility, so I'm responsible for so many people here. So what I have started a sense of accountability practices. We have quarterly goals, and we have we already prioritized for that quarter what are the projects we are doing, and that is with discussions with product and our team together. We weigh them and see what are important for the team. So that helps us a lot. And once we have the projects, including level 1, level 2 engineers, I make sure everybody has a project assigned to them. So there is a primary owner and a secondary owner for each of the projects. Again, we tell them this is like helping them learn accountability to make sure their project gets done. And we tell them very clearly, you are not responsible to do the project entirely because we have a team to support you. We have your back. But at the same time, you are accountable for this project getting done. So you make sure you're doing all the communications right, talking to the stakeholders and getting them done. And I've seen that improved a lot of like, that is also empowering them, right? So that has improved a lot of how getting them. As a leader, I don't have to sit and run all my projects, or I have a project manager to do that. And this has improved that confidence I have seen in them. And when it comes to priorities, I do want to add that especially with I'm from the operations group. So in the operations group, we are like very central to all the groups. So we get tickets on different priority levels. So we gave them very clear run book on the priorities. Security is a top priority if any security incident comes, and production incidents are top priority. So, and then look at P10, P1s, and then look at your projects, and then look at next priority level. So we have like a run book we have on top of our team Confluence page that, and when in doubt, always talk to your manager, or if anything comes in between, and that we are always there for them.
Awesome. Yeah, I appreciate that insight and love your perspective on really trying to empower every member of your team, especially when we're not able to talk to each other every day. That sense of empowerment and that feeling that I know which way the ship is going becomes so much more important. That actually segues us nicely, I think, into this question here from Eric, looking at professional and personal growth and how you support individual learning and growth within your team. One of the things that we've talked about in the past is this idea of creating a continuous learning culture and tying that to your upskilling and learning development programs. Navendu, maybe I'll head to you next. How are you guys at Slalom Build thinking about sort of the career path for a person who comes into the company, and how are you thinking about the learning development pathways and the ways that you communicate that to your teams?
That's a great question, Stephen. I think through a lot of trial and error within Build, we have a mature career development framework that is applicable at all levels, individual contributors all the way up to leaders. And the key pillars are consistent delivery, how do you grow the company by your own contributions, your own expertise in your individual area, and how you show up. What does your presence look like? And it's pretty granular in terms of each of these four pillars on how we evaluate an individual. We do have something like an 18-month role transition plan that guides us what steps you need to take from moving from one role to another. So when the role transition happens, it's not like, okay, one day you are a senior engineer. It's a seamless process for an individual. And we make sure the hiring manager, people managers understand the process, what it takes to grow in a role, and work with your direct reports on that process at all levels. In fact, my people manager or my manager also works with me on my career journey within the company. So that's the career development aspect of the whole process within Build. And on the flip side, it goes back to culture, right? When it comes to learning, it's deeply embedded in our fabric. There is full support for upskilling yourself, whether you're taking certifications, whether you want to spend time working on hackathons, whether you want to spend time in the IoT room in a Build Center to tinker around with stuff, whether you write blog posts. It's also tied to your compensation in certain ways. We have a very transparent process for calculating bonuses that tells you how you did. What did you do beyond the regular project work? Where did you step out of the norm to get things done? And we want to make sure we celebrate that. So yeah, I mean, making it part of your culture, making sure that people recognize that it is important to upskill yourself is pretty important.
For sure. It's interesting too to think about, one of the common things that we hear often is, how do we get people during their downtime to think about learning something new? Or how do we make it so easy for people to go and learn something new while they're on the job? that it just becomes part of the routine. And I'm curious, maybe Krishna or Aaron, or both of you, I wonder if you have some perspectives on how you start to encourage that and how you kind of show people how to use their time in that way and help make that easier for folks.
Yeah, I agree with Navendu about the culture. We have very similar culture too. And in business, it's like if you're not moving forward, you're falling behind. And that applies to individuals as well. So with my teams, I really advocate and subscribe to it, and that we need to be upscaling so we are not falling behind. Case in point, I'm in middle of a Harvard course named Design Thinking and Innovation right now. And it goes on for 7 weeks. And it's not because somebody asked me to do it. It's because I do want to do better my skills. And what we have done is we have provided a lot of tools with the teams. Like we have associations with LinkedIn Learning. We have eCornell courses where people can get all those for free. And we have education policy also, like people are welcome to take any course anywhere in the world they want, and we pay for them. So one important thing that was very impactful and useful was, it's not enough if we gave them all the tools, we need to give them the time too. So that's when we introduced Educate Days, where once a quarter, entire company from the CEO to everybody won't go to any meetings, but we leave the day just for education. So that happens once a quarter. So this is just providing additional avenues than just providing the tools. And me personally in my team also give them like Friday half day to take it easy. And then in that time too, if they want, they can spend for education too.
Cool stuff. This is a fun topic also because it's so hard. I think, you know, as managers, we're responsible both to the company and trying to hit our targets and goals, but we're also responsible to the individuals on our team and making sure they are, you know, successful and fulfilled with their careers. And those two goals are sometimes in conflict. You know, it's easy and you're winning when like they're 100% aligned, but when they're not exactly in the same direction, that's when you have like a multi-point optimization problem, which doesn't necessarily have a global maximum. And so the approach to this is through one-on-ones and getting to know the individual, find out what they're interested in, what they're excited in, and what more often than not we've been able to do is find that there are areas that someone's interested in that they want to learn more about, and Zoox actually does something kind of like that. So we say, okay, great, we're going to find some time in the next month or next quarter where you will be responsible for a project in that domain. I know you're not very good at it, but that's why you're going to do it. And we've set you up with this expert who will review all your design docs and give you feedback on the code. And sometimes these are like big challenging projects, and sometimes they're just like, I want to get better at this one aspect of code. And like, one specific example is there was somebody who was not very good at using templates as a coding tool. It's like, great, you're going to use them in your next project. What if we don't have to use templates? It's like, that's fine, you're going to use them anyway, because it's going to be a good opportunity to get expert from this other person on how to do them. And you know what, in hindsight, did that project need templates? No, we might have been fine without them, but it was a good opportunity to, like, we delivered the project, and the feature was essential and has been still used today. And it was a good opportunity for that person to try a new thing and get feedback from the experts who do that more regularly. So when there is a chance for that learning opportunity to be sort of directly in support of other company goals, even if it's not necessarily the goal of my specific team, that's still okay, and that's still good for Zoox, and it's good for the individual. So that's usually my first stop when I'm trying to look for ways that people want growth. I think if there are, honestly, if they came to me and said, I have a specific class or LinkedIn thing that I want to do, that would be awesome if they came like with specific things. So sometimes it's just about making sure that they know those resources are out there. And so, Krishna's culture and approach to that is actually really cool. And I think that's one of the things that Zoox has been trying to get running, but hasn't been as successful with as it sounds like she is.
Right. I think that ties back well to your earlier point about the need to really know the individual, right? Like, what opportunities do you have to connect the dots between the thing that they've maybe mentioned they need to learn or that they need to learn, and connecting that to a project, even if it means that, maybe it takes a little bit longer, just really focusing on that skill development as a key part of the development of the company and of the individual. I'm just looking at the time. It seems like we've got about 15 minutes left. Thank you so much to everyone who's put questions in. I would encourage you, in the time that we have left, if you have any questions you want to share, please drop them in the chat, and we'll get to as many as we can. In the meantime, though, we talked a lot about ways in which we encourage our teams, the ways in which we continue to develop our groups. But I'm curious, from a personal perspective, how the three of you have tackled sort of work-life balance and growing your own responsibilities in this unusual time. Although I suppose maybe we've been at it long enough that it's normal enough. But have there been any things that have worked particularly well for you as you think about making more time for yourself to grow and building yourselves as leaders? Let's see, Navendu, maybe I can start with you.
Yeah, I think remote setting definitely comes with its own challenges. Being in a consulting environment, reading the room, reading body language is crucial in meetings, whether it's with an individual or with a group of people, whether it's with clients. Not easy to do on camera. So that definitely took some understanding in doing it, how you communicate and how to show up in meetings to ensure a more effective outcome. The biggest challenge I personally faced was we had a daughter born right in the middle of COVID, so we had to adjust. She could not go to a daycare. We had no help, so my wife had to juggle between work and kind of raising a little one. It was definitely fun seeing a 2-year-old around, just kind of growing up, which you don't get to see because either they're with your, parents or help or in daycare. For 2 years, we saw a little one growing up day by day, which was amazing. As far as career growth or personal growth is concerned, I think over-indexing on how you manage relationships with peers, with higher ups, and with the direct reports on a regular basis, a regular cadence, being reflective of where you are and where you want to get to. Those are the key things I constantly focus on to ensure everybody's aligned as teams grows, and as I grow in my role, I kind of move away from a doer to be more of a promise maker. So how do I align with my team? How do I ensure we're balancing and maintaining the same culture? How do I ensure that my direct reports are not burning out themselves, and maintaining that work-life balance in their lives as well is important, because that's how I scale. That's how I ensure retention and grow my team.
Awesome, thank you. Krishna, I see you came off mute.
Sure, I can give, from my lessons learned, 3 tips on maintaining the work-life balance and helping the team too. One thing I do is we are very transparent. We tell the team very clearly, we don't expect you to do 9-to-5 job. As long as you're getting your things done, that is more important to me. That gives them the freedom to go for an appointment, or they can just let us know. As long as I know where you are, that's all matters, so I can have your back. So people are very open once you say that, and this is us taking one step to help their work-life balance, right? So there can be many things when you have remote, you have things at home, or any carpenter can come, anything can happen. And today they feel more flexible because we have created that kind of culture. And 2 is about walking the talk. As leaders, it is very important to show that we are also taking vacation. And and tell them that, okay, this thing happened with me, so we are also human. So I think that also encourages our team more, like, okay, and now my leader can do that, so I can do it more without feeling any guilt. I had to convince one of my teammates today one of my managers to not feel guilty because they got COVID and they can't come to work for 3 days, and they already feel guilty about it. I'm like, this is the last thing we want, right? We have created a culture where you shouldn't be feeling such way. And for us, health is most important to you or us, your health. So please don't come back till you're 100%, even though it's remote. And 3 is again the culture. I'm a big fan of Jeff Wiener, and I try to follow his compassionate leadership, so where I can. So as long as when people are sick or when people say they want to do something, showing that empathetic culture, like trying to understand, putting yourself in their shoes, and how everything you answer comes differently when you do that. So showing that kind of responses also help them be more open to you, and you can both understand the situation. That can help their work-life balance.
It looks like there's related to that, a question that just came in around PTO and vacation. One, do you feel like people are taking more or less over time? And if taking less, do you have a sense of what maybe that root cause is, or any other ways that you're addressing that? Krishna, you pointed to that already.
Yeah, we have unlimited PTO too, and everybody thinks it's kind of pro and con, because people feel the guilt if they take more. So when it's unlimited, it is up to the manager completely. Again, like I mentioned, the walking the talk, the manager doing that helps a lot. That's what we have done before. And then we also have a policy, like even though it is unlimited, we are tracking your time, and you have to take at least 2 weeks off in a year, and 1 week off in 6 months. If you have this specific kind of things, at least you are making sure people are taking time off. Yeah.
Excellent. Thanks for those questions, everyone. Keep sending them in if you have them. One of the things that we haven't touched on yet, but I know has been a big topic, particularly over the last year and a half or so, is the ways in which organizations at every level are incorporating DE&I strategies and taking those from sort of larger goals to specific actions and starting to measure progress against those things. And I'm curious if any of you could comment on any sort of tools or resources or processes that you all put in place to help meet some of those goals. But in general, also just tools for exploring and encouraging different perspectives and experiences, particularly when often we're all in our little Zoom box. I'll pass that to whoever would like to jump on it first.
Sure, I can take that. As a woman in tech, I believe a special spot is reserved in hell for women who don't support women. So it's not about walking the talk too, right? You have to do that too, right? So one thing when it comes to DI efforts is it starts ideally with hiring. So when you have put DEI practices into your hiring, like when it is an apples and apples comparison, always choose for a diversity, as it makes the team stronger with a different outlook. So, and again, for practicing DI, I have seen many companies create communities and create channels and talk about it. That is good. That is good way of showing that the company is thinking about it. But at the same time, what are you doing one step ahead other than what you have here? Like, for example, the one recent one I have done, our company has done, is basically we ran a hackathon based on understanding the challenges of Black-owned businesses and trying to create solutions for them. So these are like few examples, and we also create awareness and have meetings and meetups within Emburse, which can talk about this and bring awareness. So these are a few examples.
I love those examples. Those are good ones. I think one of the other things too is that we've been trying to do as well at Zoox is try to be better at acknowledging when we don't meet our goals, whether it's hiring or just being better with pronoun use or whatever it is, and then correcting and taking action immediately. And so like there have been times where an individual will be giving some training talk and they'll just be using he, him for all of their examples, even though there are women in the room. And I followed up with that person afterwards. I said, come on, let's fix this. And then the next day, not only did they do a better job, but they acknowledged it and they said, look, someone gave me some feedback on this thing. I wasn't really meeting our one Zoox culture and trying to do this, so I will be better today. And so it was, it's, even though that isn't necessarily like a big initiative that we did, we're trying to establish a place where like, there's no shame in being wrong as long as we're taking action and trying to improve ourselves on that front right away. So, and I think on that front, there's, I've seen a lot of good progress, both among myself and peers.
I think in addition to recruiting, the overall career journey for individuals within an organization is also important. We definitely try to maintain a gender parity at the leadership level, because that's how kind of the culture kind of moves from top to bottom. And that kind of drives all the recruiting initiatives, all the diversity and inclusion initiatives. It's also important when you are going through that career transition, you have all the diverse perspectives that you need to make that transition, especially at the leadership role. We have a process where we have a development team behind an individual's leadership journey within the organization, and we always try to maintain a gender parity on that panel so that that individual has the right kind of guidance throughout their career journey within Slalom. And we're getting better at it. I think that's a great way to kind of build that next generation of leaders within an organization who can not only just talk the talk, but can also practice the culture that we're trying to build within the organization.
Oh, that's great. It's so interesting to see all these answers taken together. I love how they tie together. Thinking about, the culture that you're creating in so many ways is those little actions that you take every day, those little pieces of feedback that then get incorporated into the next presentation. But then the question after that then becomes, okay, how do we scale that? And how do we make that a consistent experience across all of our interactions and really kind of make it inherent to what it is that we do? Thank you so much. Those are amazing answers and great insights. With the few minutes that we have left, I want to turn to Jess's question. It's a great one. And I think everyone on this call today who has gone through the hiring process or been a hiring manager will probably have some stories to tell. But any thoughts on some of the more strange or elaborate requests that you've received from new hires, and how many of them have you fulfilled, or how have you thought about them? Any stories or interesting anecdotes to share? If anyone on the call has some thoughts, feel free to drop that in the chat as well.
Yeah, I'd be curious to see what people drop in the chat. Honestly, most of the sort of negotiation points are all around comp or hybrid remote work these days. I think it's been fun to see what motivates some of those things, right? Like some people really want to be remote. When you learn about, I want to be remote because, and then sometimes I will admit, like 5 years ago, if someone asked to be remote for some of those reasons of like, I really want to go, I don't know, skiing every day or something, I would have been like, come on, you're coming into the office, whatever. But these days, like after our exercise through this pandemic stuff, it's like, well, that's actually potentially viable work option. So I don't know that I've had any really wild ones outside of comp stuff.
Gotcha. Thank you. All right. Well, we're coming right up to time. Krishna, Aaron, Navendu, thank you so much for taking time to be with us today, for sharing your insights on building strong teams and talking about the ways that you're empowering those teams, building strong cultures within your organizations. I certainly look forward to future conversations. And with that, Emma, I will pass it back to you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Stephen, and thank you so much for all of you guys for being here today on our panel, and for everyone in the audience. This was one of the most engaged audiences I think we've had. So thank you all just for being here, for engaging. I think there is just so much more we could have talked through about this discussion. I loved how practical this was. So many practical applications that I'm definitely taking away, and I'm sure all of you are. So we'd love to hear more about what you kind of learned from this panel. So feel free to, I see some chats coming through, let us know, send us your thoughts. And then also our panelists, I'm sure that they would all love to connect with you guys after this. So feel free to add them on LinkedIn and just keep the conversation going. So again, thank you all for being here today. Make sure to stay tuned for all of the events we have coming up pretty soon here at Tech in Motion, and we will see you at the next event. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Take care. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.